Hi everyone, this is my 1989 Teardrop American Outbacker. It's a very lightweight and sort of rare and kind of weird teardrop trailer, teardrop camper that I bought a few months ago. This is the first trip that I've taken it on. I've been at this campsite for 3 days and 2 nights, and I have thoughts. In fact, I have a list of 13 or 14 thoughts about this thing that I want to share with you guys. But first I want to show you what I've done to this, the things that I've added, which isn't a lot, but there are a few things, and then also the setup that I have inside. So first of all, one of the cool things about this camper is these Gullwing doors. They're pretty neat. And the first thing you might notice is that I have screens here. Screens are the first thing that I wanted to do to this to make it a little bit more livable when camping. I made these myself. I sewed them from no-seam mesh, and there are 2 doors on this thing, and so there are 2 screens. And they zip open like so. And I'll show you in a second how I added these, but these were really the first things I wanted to add because they're so important. It's really nice to not have bugs inside of your home for the night. And so I spent a couple of days whipping these up, and it wasn't especially easy, but sewing really is a useful skill to have if you're a camper, regardless of the kind of camping you do. It's really fun to be able to just have an idea of something in your mind and be able to bring it into reality. So anyway, let's get inside and I'll show you the setup. We're gonna go in on the opposite side of where we just were, and this is it. So again, not a whole lot has changed since I first showed this thing to you guys. I have a bunch of things on the list to do to this, but I wanted to actually camp in it for a couple nights first just to get a better idea of what exactly I wanted to do. And so first of all, we have the mattress in here. This is the mattress that came with it, and it's super comfortable. Really nice, big, full queen size mattress, and very comfortable. I added a sleeping bag, and we have a few pillows. And the previous owner had installed these hammocks. So 1 hammock here, and then 2 hammocks over here. And I've made use of them. I'm using the same things here. And so in this one, I have just basically reading material. I have a book, my Kindle, and my planner and a notebook. Right here is a trash bag. And then right here is just a roll of toilet paper in a plastic bag and a Ziploc bag. Here's a look at the screen from the inside. And so it took me a while to figure out how exactly to mount the screens here and what to attach them to. I don't know if we'll really be able to fully explain it here, but basically I didn't want to drill any holes into this thing or into these metal pieces alongside the doors. And so I cut this piece of 1x2 to size, and I used that as kind of a header for the door, and I stapled the mesh to it. And then I used these clamps here, so we have these C-clamps on either side here that hold this piece on, because there are these little L brackets here that go around. And anyway, this isn't a how-to, but I'm just showing you basically what I did. And then, so I cut the piece of no-seam mesh to size, and then I sewed inexpertly, but gets the job done. I sewed this zipper in here, and it's the same on both sides. And then also, I wanted some curtains to make it a little bit darker. And so I have curtains here that just roll down. They're not perfectly cut to size because these are scrap things that I already had in my bin of sewing materials and fabrics. And so, there is some gap here, but it gets the job done. And then over here, I have a Jackery. This is my power station. This is the Jackery Explorer 1500, which is way overkill for just, charging up camera and phone batteries at the end of the day and running this light, this little USB light bulb here. But it's what I had, and so it's what's in here now. And I also have a USB cord right here that has micro USB, USB-C, and Lightning to charge my various devices. These are cool little cables if you've never seen these before. I'll put links to this stuff in the video description if you're interested. It's like a 5-foot cable. And this USB light bulb is super handy. I have these in both of my vehicles, and then you know, obviously in here also. And let's see, where is the little remote to it? It's attached to the cable. You can turn it on. Let's see here. Turn on the USB ports, and so you can turn on the light and you can change the color of the light. It has 3 different color options. You can make it more dim like this, or you can make it brighter like this by just pressing these various buttons. Really nice little things. I love these. And so I originally was going to put this on the ceiling, and so I added a couple of these just removable command strips or command hooks, but it was a little bit too bright and in my face, and so I've just been hanging it off of this clip over here. And the sides of the mesh, by the way, are held on by magnets. All of these things poking out, these are magnets that hold the mesh screen to these metal pieces right here on either side of the door. And as far as storage goes, there are these empty spaces here toward the foot of the camper, underneath the galley area, which is right here. And my original plan was to basically create cubbies here, like have wood paneling and doors in the panels, but I don't think I'm gonna do that. I think that's just too much hassle, to be honest. And so my plan here, and what I've been doing on this trip, is to just put my gear into bags. These are dry bags. These are 20-liter, I believe, dry bags. One there, and one there, and I mean, there's plenty of space. I could fit a few bags on each side, and I could put more stuff down here, but for now it's just a bag on each side. This bag has clothes in it. This bag has mostly electronics in it, so camera gear and ways to charge my various camera batteries. And I think that, you know, for example, when my wife comes with me on future trips in this thing, I can have one side and she can have the other side, and I think there's plenty of storage here. Especially if you include along the sides of the bed or of the mattress. So for example, over here, this is my toiletry bag. So my wife's toiletry bag, she has a similar sort of thing, can go over here. And then toward my head, I have this other dry bag, and I've been using this for my shoes. My camp shoes go in there. And then turning around toward the head of the camper, again, is this other hammock, and I'm not entirely sure yet what to do with these. I've put some stuff in here on this trip, just for this trip, and I'm probably going to move it around on future adventures. But right now I have my down jacket, I have a knife, I have my pee bottle, and I have a water bottle and a headlamp. So just stuff that I might need during the night, basically, while I'm in here. And that's just about it as far as what I've done to this, and you know, the tour of the inside of my weird little camper here. And then this Jackery 100-watt solar panel stores underneath the mattress. You know, it folds down to be pretty flat. It collapses to be pretty skinny, and this runs into the Jackery and charges it. I do have a couple of these. I'll probably bring another one on the next trip, and I'll also probably bring an extension cord just so I can, you know, put this another 20 or 30 feet out. Because in places like this, I am in the trees, and the sun kind of is a little bit unreliable in the trees here. And so being able to take the panels out to a more permanently open area would be helpful. And here's a closer look at where the cable goes into the camper. There are 2 zipper pulls on this zipper, and so there's a little bit of a gap between there if you want there to be, and makes it easy to just slot the cable right on in. I have a list of a bunch of things that I want to do to this, but we'll talk more about those in a future video, maybe. I now want to go into the 13 or 14 points that I have that I wanted to talk to you guys about. Basically just different thoughts about this thing. And some of these apply to this camper in particular, and some of them just apply to little teardrop campers in general. The first is that this thing is super easy to pull behind the Land Cruiser. This weighs about 400 pounds. And I mean, I can't even feel it behind the Land Cruiser. It's very, very easy to tow. I would like to get a towing package installed on my RAV4 so that I could tow the camper with the RAV4. I'm about 3 hours from home. I'm in western Wyoming, and so I pulled it for 3 hours here, didn't have any issues, and then I've pulled it for several miles on dirt roads in the national forest here to get to this campsite. You can see the road coming in. I mean, it's not a very good road, but yeah, no issues at all. Point two is that it's just a fun thing to have at camp. It's just a neat, cool thing to have. So for example, on this trip, I've been gone away from camp during the day. I've been fishing, then I come back to camp toward the end of the day. And as I've been coming down this little side road in the Land Cruiser, and I see this and I just think, man, what a fun little spot to have. What a neat little home away from home. I like how it looks. It's just fun. It's just fun to look at. Point number three is that this thing makes it significantly more stressful to find a campsite. When I'm in the Land Cruiser or even the RAV4, I can just drive around on any dirt road in the area that tickles my fancy. I can go explore. I can go, oh, what's down this road, and follow all the dirt roads to my heart's content. With this, it's tricky, and you have to make sure if you go down this dirt road, you can get back out again. Backing up with something like this with such a light trailer isn't super easy, and so you need to make sure there's a good spot to turn around, ideally. And in general, it's just way easier to find a campsite when it's just a vehicle instead of this camper. It's definitely more stressful than it otherwise would be. Point number four that I wanted to make is just that this thing is unnecessary for me as an individual. When it's just me camping on my own, I don't need or really want something like this. It's a hassle and it's just unnecessary when I have a perfectly good camping setup in the back of my Land Cruiser. My original plan for this thing, and the idea was that I could use this as kind of a home base when I do go to a spot for 3 or 4 days at a time. Like if I go there to make several fishing videos for my other channel, for example, I can drive to a spot, have a home base, and go out during the day, come back to this at night, and just have a good little home base. But the thing is, this doesn't really add much that I don't already have in the Land Cruiser. Yeah, it's a little bit bigger, there's a little bit more space, there's a little bit more headroom and a little bit more width, the bed is bigger, but I don't really care about that. I think the thing that would really differentiate the camper from the Land Cruiser would be having a separate sitting area with a little table at it. Otherwise, the camper is just another sleeping area, which I don't need because I already have a sleeping area in the Land Cruiser. I thought this would be sort of like a little cabin on wheels, but I would like the cabin to have a sitting area where I can sit to eat or work on my laptop or plan the next day's adventures or whatever. Point number five is that it really just doesn't fit with my style of camping. For me, when I'm out on the road, when I'm traveling, I really like having flexibility and the freedom to just go wherever. Yesterday, I drove about 45 minutes this way in the Land Cruiser to go fish a creek, and while I was over there, I thought, you know what? I'd like to just camp over here and save myself having to drive the 45 minutes back here in an area that I didn't really want to fish again, but I couldn't because the camper was here. Now, really this depends on the style of camping that you do. If you're the kind of person that goes out into the wilderness and you like to just sit at camp for a few days or a week and use that as a base camp, then a little camper like this could really be helpful for you. But for me, I didn't like feeling like I had to be tied down to this spot. Even though ostensibly the plan was to spend a few days in this area, I just didn't like having to come back here. And now obviously, this isn't hard to move. I could have just taken this over to the next spot, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having a little home base camper like this. For point number 6, and I've kind of touched on this already, but it's a weird in-between size. It's not that much bigger than the Land Cruiser, and it doesn't really have any amenities that the Land Cruiser doesn't, to be honest. It's just a place to sleep at night. Now there is the galley at the back, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit, but so one of the other use cases for this was that I could go camping with my wife and my dog, and I could potentially leave them at camp in this thing, and then I could take the car and go off and maybe film a fishing video, go fish for a couple hours, and then come back to camp. The thing is, again, this is just a bed. It'd feel better if there were a place to sit so that my wife, once she wakes up, could, move over to the little table and have breakfast there and whatever. I just think that would be a nicer place to hang out versus just this, which is just a bed. And so obviously you can get camp chairs and tables, have a little camp chair right here, and you could set up a little outdoor sitting area, but that, I think, kind of defeats the purpose of something like this, which is to kind of add to what you already have in the form of your vehicle. And I think that this by itself doesn't really add much to what I already have. Point number 7 takes me back to my wife. So she likes this thing. She hasn't spent the night in it yet. She was going to come with me on this trip, but she wasn't feeling well, and so she's back at home resting. But I think she would enjoy sleeping in this more than sleeping in the car. This is just cuter. It feels more cozy. It's a little bit more fun. Again, there's more room. It's just a little bit nicer than sleeping in the car, and I think that's important to her. To me, that doesn't really matter at all. I like convenience more than comfort, but for her sake, when we do go camping together, I think she would prefer to sleep in the camper. Point number 8 is that if you don't have something like this, if you don't have a vehicle that's already set up to sleep in, I think that something like this makes much more sense. This is your home away from home. This is your sleeping setup, and you can just use this for transportation, and you don't need to build any kind of platform in your vehicle. You don't need to permanently modify your vehicle or anything like that. Your vehicle is your vehicle, and then this is your little camper. I think that's when these things really make sense. But again, they make less sense when you already have a nice big sleeping setup in the back of your vehicle. Point number 9, and again I've touched on this, but I really wanted to reiterate it, is that this is a bigger sleeping setup than my car. And so if something like this is a little bit tight for you, like if you have a big dog or if you have a kid and a dog, a car might not be the best setup for you. An SUV might not be the best setup for you. This is bigger. This is, again, a queen size bed, and there's room on the sides. This is smaller than a queen size bed. So if you do need or want that extra space, then yeah, something like this is better. Point number 10 that I wanted to make was that this thing was super fast and easy to set up once I got to camp. So once I got here a couple days ago, I just uncoupled this from the ball hitch of the Land Cruiser and swung the jack here down and did this until it was at the height that I wanted it to be at, and just super easy. Now, not quite as easy or fast as sleeping in your vehicle. When I sleep in the Land Cruiser or the RAV4, I just have to park and I'm done. There's no uncoupling you have to do or anything like that. But this is way, way easier than a tent and much faster than a tent. And at the end of your camping adventure, it's kind of awful to have to put a wet ball of nylon that is the tent back into its stuff sack. That's just a hassle. This, really, there isn't any hassle, which is really nice. Point number 11 that I wanted to make is that this thing is relatively easy to get in and out of. And so if you do have mobility issues, something like this is really nice versus the Land Cruiser, which, is a pretty high car. It's a big car, or even something like a rooftop tent. This is much easier to get in and out of. You can just kind of almost fall back into it. And if you're older, or again, if you have like an old dog that would have trouble getting in and out of your car or your high up tent, something like this could work really well for you. Point number 12 takes us to the back, to the galley area. And the problem with this, well, there are a couple of problems. The first is that I don't really cook on my trips. I basically eat sandwiches and stuff that I don't need a stove for because I don't like cooking. And so I don't know what to do with this spot, because also, even if I did want to cook, you're not supposed to cook back here because this thing is all plastic. This is not fiberglass. That's one of the weird things about this. It's plastic, like a plastic kayak. And so you don't want to cook here, even though this surface here is wood, and this here is wood. By the way, these can just be removed. These are little, like little sinks, little storage areas. And so even if I did want to cook back here, you don't really want to cook back here. And so that begs the question, what do I do with this area? I don't really need extra storage space. The Land Cruiser has all the storage space that I need. I think if I continue to use this camper, the plan is to put bathroom stuff back here, maybe like a little pop-up tent and a little portable camp toilet. I don't know, I still haven't decided. It's just not super useful for me. The second to last thing that I wanted to mention is that it's a little bit tricky having a separate setup like this because you have to think really hard about where you want your things to be. When it's just me in my car, everything goes in the car. But when you add something like this, it's like, okay, do the toiletries go in the camper or do they go in the car? Does the food go in the camper or in the car? Do I need certain things in both places? You know, it's not as simple, not as intuitive as just having a vehicle, in which case you just put everything in there. I think this kind of thing does get easier as you use something like this more than you have your routine down, but even then I think that you're probably still going back and forth for things that you thought were in there but are in there, and vice versa. And so finally we get to the end of my thoughts here, point number 14, and that is what's next. If it were just up to me, I would probably just sell this thing and use the money for something else, you know, put it toward future videos and be done with it. But because my wife likes this thing, you know, she doesn't really want me to sell it, even though she hasn't slept in it yet. I do think she would enjoy sleeping in here more than sleeping in here. That makes things a little bit more tricky. So the question is, do we keep this or do we get something a little bit bigger, maybe that has a separate sitting area, but do I want to drive something bigger? And so I don't know yet. I am gonna hopefully take my wife out in this sometime in the next month or so. I don't know if I'll make a video about it or not, but there are still some questions that I have about this thing. Overall, I like it. It's not necessary for the kind of traveling that I do by myself. I would prefer to just have the car. I like having the freedom and the easiness of having just this to deal with instead of having this, which makes it easier or makes it harder to just drive in general, but then also find places to camp. And then when you're going through cities, it's a kind of a pain. When you're going into a gas station, it's kind of a pain. I like just having a car. I like sleeping in my SUV, but there's the wife and the dog factor to consider. So I don't know what the future holds for me and this thing for us and this thing for my 1989 weird Teardrop American Outbacker, the weirdest teardrop camper I've ever seen. But I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to say. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have questions. Let me know if you have suggestions for other things like this for me to try out. And thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Be sure to check out Adventure Know-How, my new site, where you can gain access to a map of all of my free campsites, plus monthly bonus videos that you won't find anywhere else. Learn more at adventureknowhow.com. And for links to everything else SUV RVing related, visit suvrving.com. Links to these sites and more will be in the video description.